Hello and welcome back to another episode of Ask Sarah. Today I've got two awesome questions for you. The first question comes from a fellow videographer and he asks, how do you sell raw footage? How do you package and sell it? So this one is kind of for the videographers, but if you're a photographer or a planner, this is an episode I want you to listen to as well, because a lot of times your clients are asking you about videography and they might ask you weird questions like this. So it's nice for you to have an answer for them. So I don't necessarily consider myself an authority on what people should be doing in their business. Every business is unique. But what I am going to say is everybody should listen to this take on selling raw footage. So here's the problem with raw footage. No one knows what it is. Absolutely nobody. If you go into like the big wedding videographers Facebook group that has like 60,000 people in it, every single day there's a post in there like, how are we doing raw footage this week? How are we editing it? Is it edited at all? Is it just all the clips? Do you put it on a timeline? My clients can't even open the video files I'm shooting on. Do I have to like encode them into a file they can actually open on their computer? So on and so forth. So nobody is in agreement on what raw footage is or looks like. So that's a huge problem. Vendors don't even know. So how could clients know? Nobody knows. But what clients do know is that this is something that they want. And I totally get that. So my approach to selling and packaging raw footage is, what does the client want? Because ultimately, that's all that matters. What is the client actually envisioning? So anytime I have this conversation and someone's like, do you sell raw footage? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. What do you envision sitting down and watching when you say raw footage? What do you want to see on the screen? And 99.9% of the time, what they're really describing to me is a documentary film. They want an edited video of all of the footage in chronological order that's watchable. It's all on one timeline and it's like start to finish with the ceremony stuff in it and the reception stuff in it. And that is a huge film. That is so much work. So I price it accordingly. No shame in that. So this is also something when you're presenting your packaging and your collections. Raw footage, you might want to just put custom pricing next to that instead of putting a dollar amount on it, because if a client comes to you and says that they want raw footage and you ask them, okay, what is that? And you had raw footage priced at like $200 because you were like, oh, I'll just put all their content on a hard drive and ship it off. And then they come back and they're like, no, I wanted an edited film. It's like, oh, well, you're talking about like a $1,200 add-on at this point, because like this is literally going to take me like 40 hours of man hours just working on like syncing up all this footage. So just be mindful. If you're going to switch the way that you're selling raw footage, you need to do it from like pricing guide all the way through to the end. So now that that is kind of covered, that's my approach to selling raw footage. Let's talk about all the different kinds of raw footage and what a lot of people are doing and what is kind of considered the standard in the wedding videography community. So what raw footage is it's basically the footage straight out of the camera. It's not color graded. The audio is not synced up. Nothing has been done to it. Like that is truly raw footage. And that's usually not what your client actually wants. Every once in a while they do, but it's usually not what they want. So when people say that they want the raw footage, or people or videographers are saying that they're selling raw footage, usually what they're offering is clips. Like you're literally going on a hard drive. You're going to get a hard drive in the mail and there's going to be like 900 clips, individual clips. Some of them are going to be 10 seconds. Some of them are going to be like the 30-minute ceremony cams. There might be like 3 or 4 cameras. There's going to be multiple cameras from the wedding day, like covering the entire day. The audio tracks are going to be separated onto whatever recording device. It is unsynced footage, kind of like looking through your camera roll when you've been trying to like make a good TikTok and you have 37 drafts and then you have like the one shot that's good that you're actually going to use. It's like sifting through all of that, and that's usually not what people want to see, but at its core, that is what raw footage is. Another way that people will do raw footage is they'll take all of those unedited clips. They're not going to color grade them or sync the audio, but they're just going to throw all the cameras on a timeline. So it's all the raw footage in one video. That's another way people sell it. And then other people, like me in particular, is doing more of the documentary film style where I am syncing up the audio with the footage, and I do color grade it if the coloring is really off. If not, I might just put like a preset or a LUT on top. LUTs are what like video presets are called. There's lots of different ways you can package it and sell this kind of stuff, but it's worth having a conversation with your couple about it, because the couple probably has something in their mind that is not the verbiage we're using, because the videographers, like as a community, cannot agree on this verbiage. No one agrees on what it is. No one agrees if you should send them a hard drive with all the clips on it. No one agrees if it should be color graded. No one agrees if you can sync up the audio. So what you need to do is just really have a conversation with your couples about it. And it's gonna save you a lot of pain. And like I said before, they're usually gonna ask for a documentary film, which is far more labor intensive than truly giving them raw footage. So that's gonna come in at a very different price point. The second question comes from a photographer friend who asks, how did you get into filming for companies and photographing for companies? So how I got started in that, it's not a very sexy story. I was doing solely video at the time, and I had a friend who was a brand photographer who is already establishing herself as a brand photographer, and she pulled me into that world because her clients needed video content. So she was like, oh, well, my friend Sarah is a videographer. She can definitely do brand content for you. I had dabbled in brand content a little bit before ever transitioning into working with this photographer very often on a lot of her clients. But I will say she brought me a lot of work. I mean, she literally brought me almost $80,000 in work over the course of like 2 years. Super grateful for that. Lots of great experience. That friend is also a business coach. Her name is Danielle, and I'm actually going to link her in the comments because she would be a great resource. She does coach photographers on how to do this kind of stuff, and she definitely helped me craft my collections and figure out how to market myself to these businesses. So that's how I got started. But what I've done since then is what I would recommend to anyone getting started, and that is get in front of people who have businesses and craft your brand, or craft a completely separate brand to speak to this like commercial work. And that may mean doing free spec work, which is not super fun when like you're an established wedding photographer, you're used to getting paid for your work. Now all of a sudden you're going back to working for free. That's just the name of the game sometimes. And so I would encourage you, there may be an instance where you're just like, I just gotta like bite the bullet and do a little bit of work for free, get some commercial work in my portfolio so that I can show these companies that I can do this kind of work. That's totally fine. No one's gonna judge you for that. I support it, obviously. So that's the first tip, is like try to get a little bit of it in your portfolio and then get in front of people who own businesses. So for me personally, this is what I use Facebook for, because the average age of Facebook users is like 40 to 60. And the 40 to 60-year-old business owners are adults. A lot of them have owned their business for a long time. Their businesses are moderately successful. They may not be million-dollar companies, but they're making enough of a profit that they're looking to invest in professional imagery. And so that's a great place to look. So like join your local small business groups, join your local women's networking groups. Anything local small business group is going to be the best place to start. So anytime someone in there is like, we're looking for a photographer, or I need to update my headshots, or we want a branding session, put your name in there and then use that free spec work you've done to try to like garner business and say, hey, I've done this kind of work before. Because if you haven't done that kind of work before, it's definitely a harder sell to show a business a wedding that you've done and to be like, hey, I know what I'm doing, because all they're going to see is that's a wedding. I'm not having a wedding. I need headshots. So you need to be able to show them headshots or like brand or lifestyle content that you've done on the commercial side. So yeah, spec work sucks, but it's a good way to get started. And then getting in front of where people are, you can definitely do spec work for other wedding pros, because I know the person who asked this question in particular is a wedding photographer and is very good. So do spec work for other wedding pros. That's a very easy in, because you already know them, you already have those relationships. And then you can use that work to show other businesses and be like, yes, I have done headshots. Here's some examples. I have done a branding session. Here's some examples. I have done brand video. Here's some samples, and just go on like that. So real quick, let's pivot into selling to businesses, because selling to a business is really different than selling to a customer or a bride or booking a wedding. So B2B is much more like business, I would say. It's not always a super emotional decision. Although the caveat to that is if it's like a solopreneur, so it's just one person running their business, that can be a little bit more of an emotional decision. But generally, when a business is hiring you to come and do content for them, it's like, hey, we have $3,000, we need this imagery. And they're gonna send you a list of like, we need updated headshots for our team, we need this many product photos. And you're just kind of like, okay, take it or leave it, like do it or don't, and that's totally fine. It's just a different way that you're selling and interacting with the person who's purchasing. Another thing I will say is when you start to get in front of bigger businesses, you can send them higher quotes, because they're going to expect a little bit more speed and they want more content faster. So another thing too is, what are the deadlines that they want? And typically whoever's hiring for it's going to be setting their deadline, versus you as the creative telling them, oh, this is going to take me 6 weeks to get out. The company is going to be like, we need this content within X time frame. Can you do that? Yes or no? And if they're not telling you that information, you do need to be asking, because usually their timelines are going to be a lot shorter than what you're expecting. And these are relationships that you don't necessarily want to burn, because they are going to be recurring clients, which is my final point, and then I'll let you go, is commercial work can also work on retainer bases. And this, or bases, I just said bases, I think that's a word, not totally sure. Anyway, retainer work is a great way to like pay your bills every month, if we're being honest. You have a client, you're really invested in their brand. Retainer clients can be a lot of work up front, just like onboarding them into the retainer system, getting payments set up in a way. So like I usually try to get people to just bank draft at that point, because it's much less fees than doing like a credit card or something like that. So like just getting them onboarded and set up. And when you do that, you're also more dedicated to learning their brand guidelines and like what is their coloring. Oh, actually, I lied. This is not my last point. We're going to get into style in just a second. But retainer work is a great way to keep clients. So this can be quarterly shoots. It could be like twice a year shoots, or it could be, hey, once a year, like in the spring, we're going to re-up all your content for the year. Is a great way to do it. And you have this relationship with them, and you can really get to know them and like celebrate their wins with them and DM with them and like laugh with them on social media. So I do love my retainer clients. And then the final thing, I lied earlier, that was my last point. This is my last point, is style. So when you're working commercially, you are expected to match the style of the brand. They don't care that you have your own style. They're running a business. They have a brand. So you need to be able to shoot in their style if you're going to take on their work. So I've had people come to me and be like, we need composite product imagery. And I don't do that. So I just have to tell them, like, that's not something I do. Go to my other friend. She knows how to do composite product imagery. that's not my skill set. So there may be times where someone comes to you and they just want something really out of your wheelhouse that you're not willing to do, or you know you're not good at and you don't want to do and you don't want to learn. It's totally okay to tell those clients, like, that's not something I do. But you may have clients come to you and be like, we have a darker, moodier brand. And if you're a light and airy photographer, this can feel like you're compromising your artistic vision, but really, like, this is just business. If you want to step into brand photography, you need to be able to match the style that they want and what's going to suit their brand the best. So working in a studio, shooting in the dark, doing like really intricate lighting, these are all skills you need to learn and develop. Same thing with just coloring. Does someone want like a warmer, darker picture, or is this person going for a very bright and clean aesthetic? You need to be able to edit and shoot in multiple different ways. So you kind of do have to let go of the like, this is my style, take it or leave it, which is the way things work in the wedding world, because those clients need to know what to expect when they're booking their vendor. On the corporate side, it's like, you're a professional, you should be able to like flex and mold with the brand. So that's my advice for getting into commercial work. It's a really fun world, and you're gonna be really good at it. So I'm excited to see where it takes you.